Hey, Cancer Warriors. My name is Tonya, and I am your holistic cancer wellness specialist. This is Power Pantaloons podcast, and today we have Alayna McNeal with us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to have you here. Can you tell everybody what your zone of genius is?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a online nutrition coach. So I help moms, women develop a realistic eating routine to help them overcome things like poor gut health, hormone imbalances, all of that.
Fantastic. Um, so just women or
Yeah, mostly women. That's just I relate to women. I relate to their struggles and experiences. So, but I have had some male clients and just like family members, who I have helped and, because there's basics of nutrition that apply to everybody.
so where would you start? Where do you start when you encounter a client?
Yeah. So what I do is really customized, but mostly we just work on the main thing of that. What I do is help women develop a nutrition routine or a food routine that number one, of course, like propels them towards their physical health goals, but also one that they enjoy, one that they can maintain long term. So I don't really get into a lot of like fad diets or some of those like strict protocols. We really just kind of take a look at each individual, and there are a couple key things, some main ideas that I kind of have written down that I think anyone would benefit from if they're just trying to develop a better nutrition routine. And we can kind of go through that. And these are kind of like the top. I've got four main points that are helpful when you're wanting to eat better, eat healthier.
Let's dive into that. Like I have I have lost 75 pounds in the last year and a half, and it has been small incremental changes, just little bit at a time, with the understanding that it's a lifestyle and not a diet.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's amazing. And that's like a true testament to exactly like what you were saying, just a little bit at a time. And yeah, you got to establish that foundation. It is a lifestyle. It absolutely is.
And it's interesting because we're working right now on removing excess sugar from my diet, and it's not going as wonderful as I'd like it to, but um I don't even know where I was going with this.
Oh, that's okay.
That happens,
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with this, but yeah.
That's okay. Well, when it comes to developing a better nutrition routine, I think that one thing that we can all agree on, the world of nutrition can be very contradictory, but one thing that we really can all agree on is moving away from that processed food diet towards the whole food diet is the best thing that you can do. But of course, like this is easier said than done. Um,
Yes.
we know we're supposed to do this, so why don't we do it? It's hard, and it can feel like it takes a lot of time and a lot of work, but it doesn't have to be that way. And there's a way that we can go about it that makes it feel a little bit more easier, simpler, and fun.
Yeah, we have the mindset that it's going to be difficult, but if we learn the tools, and part of it is the struggle of learning a new foundation.
Totally.
That's part of the resistance, and the other part is there all kinds of assumptions that they're not going to be fulfilled, or it's going to taste bad, or they don't like vegetables, or all of these ridiculous notions,
Totally. Yes.
because you can fancy up a Brussels sprout, I promise you, and make it delicious.
Totally. And yeah, and I had all of those things too. When I was changing my diet, I changed, I kind of like did it all overnight, and I wouldn't recommend that. But yeah, all those fears, all those assumptions. But it's interesting, I completely changed my taste buds. I changed my cravings, the way my body just processed foods, all of that. And so now I love Brussels sprouts. I didn't
I
years
do
ago.
too.
I love them.
What
Yeah.
that's where I was going. My taste buds have changed.
Yes.
Like, um, so little like processed like ring dings, right? Ring dings when I was a teenager were the thing. I loved them. And I took a bite out of one a couple of years ago, and it tasted like plastic to me. It was just
Yes.
gross, and I was like, oh.
Yes.
So it's it's super interesting when you start to introduce bitters back into your life, and you know, everything isn't ice cream and sugar, right?
Right.
You start your palate expands actually.
Yes. And there is scientific reason for that too. There's, when we're talking about gut health, there's a lot of information out there about like the gut brain connection. And they talk about how it's a two-way street. And so, yes, our brain sends signals to our gut, but lots of research coming out about the bacteria in our gut can send signals to our brain. It's two-way communication. So they totally do, just like from personal experience, I know they affect our cravings, they can affect our taste buds. So it's so interesting. So yes, it's possible. There's hope.
Yeah, that it is super interesting, and the whole um concept of your tummy telling your brain exactly what it wants. Um, so when you're starting to crave the sugars and the stuff, what does that tell you about their gut biome?
Yeah, for sure. So I do talk a little bit about this, and if you have a lot of those sugary cravings, it can definitely be a sign of different bacteria levels in your gut. So um, there's bad bacteria. Okay, that's what we call like the harmful bacteria in our guts. And then we have beneficial bacteria in our guts, and they are responsible for so many things in our body. They have a hand in so many things in our body, just from like metabolism, the way that we process food. We were talking about cravings, even things like our mood. Um, so they play a role in so many things. So but the harmful bacteria they eat, they survive off of the sugars, and the beneficial bacteria they eat the fibrous food, the sometimes referred to as like the prebiotics. So if someone is really craving and has those like intense sugar cravings, that to me is always a sign that we got to do a little bit of work to um, eliminate some of those harmful bacteria levels in your body and do what we can to build up the beneficial bacteria.
How would you go about doing that?
Yeah, so it really depends on the client. I have one thing that I do for my clients is like a customized detox repair protocol. And if you are not familiar with it, you can just look up like 5R protocol for gut health. And it's like a series of 5 steps, like 5 principles that you want to do when you are trying to heal your gut and improve your gut. And so the first step usually is like an elimination step. So like, exactly like you were saying, maybe it's eliminating some of the sugar, starving those harmful guys out. Another thing that it can be really helpful is like a shot of apple cider vinegar in the morning. That can do a lot to destroy some of those harmful bacteria. Um, and then, of course, like food is the most powerful thing that you can do. So, switching up what you eat. So, like you were saying, eliminate some of the sugars, the processed foods, the carbohydrates, and move more towards the whole foods. One of the one of the things that I want to talk about is a type of whole foods that are so critical for doing exactly this, for gut health, that are often overlooked. And when people try to start eating healthier and they'll start eating more whole foods. But what I like to tell people is not all whole foods are created equal. And these types of foods are really often left out. So one of the first things that I work on with my client is how do we get more cruciferous veggies and dark leafy greens into your diet? And like you were saying, the cruciferous veggies, the Brussels sprouts, they are not always on people's top list of favorite foods. So we figure out, okay, how can we cook these foods? How can we prepare these foods in a way that you enjoy? And I think it's just a matter of being being intentional and finding ways that you enjoy these things. You know, like my husband, my brothers, they aren't big on the veggies, but they have found certain ways to cook them, that, you know, put some extra virgin olive oil on it, like the cruciferous veggies. Sorry, I should tell you what they are. You said Brussels sprouts, things like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and then dark leafy greens. So like your spinach, your arugula, your kale. So find ways that you enjoy to cook them. I really love like putting some extra virgin olive oil on them, putting my favorite seasonings on them, and just throwing them in the oven for like 10 minutes. It's so easy and it's really good. And you can choose the spices that you like. Um,
Roasted
so
vegetables are amazing.
yes, yes, they're so good. Or like my husband especially, they like to like grill, you know, so put them on the grill. It gives them a little bit of that different flavor. If that's something that you enjoy, then do that, you know. So I think just like giving yourself permission to be creative and just being intentional about, okay, how do I get these types of foods in my food routine? You know, it can be as simple as like kale on your tacos. Like I love a good Taco Tuesday. Like we are big Taco Tuesday fans in my house. So okay, put some kale in your tacos. You know, it can be things like that.
You can hide a lot in a meatloaf
There you go. Yes,
and
exactly.
burgers. Like
Perfect example. Yes, yes.
you really can. And what I for tacos and things like that, I actually like to use romaine lettuce as the or sandwiches, just use it as the bread. The
Yes. Yep.
it gives you the nice crunch and it's way better than the tortillas or the white the white bread.
Yes.
Horror upon horrors.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I do that with burgers, with tacos. Yeah.
I want to ask a question about so is there a way to tell what's going on in the gut aside from just like look like is there blood test or is there some sort of test that could tell you what's going on in there?
That's a really good question. When it comes to gut health, um, in my personal opinion, the tests aren't so straightforward. So, you know, the other side that I work with is like hormonal imbalances. Those are a little bit more straightforward in the labs, in the tests. With gut health, it's not so clear right now. Of course, like they're working on that. There's a couple different tests that I normally recommend for my clients that kind of can give a little bit of an insight into that. So one of them is the Dutch test. It's a urine analysis test. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Nope.
So it's like one, you know, there's so many different tests that you can get, but it's one that's really convenient because you can do it at home. That's why my clients love it. But it has some indicators on there for like how your gut health is doing. But when it comes to gut health specifically, I think that we can look at biofeedback and that can be really helpful. So just paying attention to how you feel after meals. You know, if you're having symptoms like bloating or your like stomach pain after you eat, or for me it was acid reflux. I had really bad acid reflux. Um, you know, really gassy, or just like your bowel movements are like a huge indicator of gut health. So there's a lot that you can see just in the biofeedback to help you kind of figure out where you're at with gut health. Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah. I think that it's super important to keep track of stuff like that. Like I advocate keeping records on everything, and if you're keeping a diary of your food, that helps you when you start having symptoms. You can kind of look and you can go, oh, that's related to this, or that you can tie it back. I have found that when I do food diaries, it does help me in instances like that.
Yeah, totally. That's a great practice. Food logs are great. And it doesn't have to be like overly complicated. Just write down what you eat, or something. Like my clients will take pictures of every meal, and
I'm
kind of just
guilty.
it's so easy, right? We can keep it simple. But yeah, that's great. I'm a former chemist. My background's chemistry, so I love data. So I'm like,
Mm.
yes, get all the data that you can. But that's one of the things that I'll do with my clients is we will track. we call it the weekly check-in, but that's where it's like a little 10-minute form they fill out every week, and it just lists all their biofeedback, those kinds of things. And then, yeah, keeping that food log can be super helpful.
Okay, so because your background is in chemistry, you might I've heard of it. I don't have any like data on it that the order in which you eat your food will determine how you metabolize it and if you have like lower your glucose spiking, like protein first and then vegetables and then your carbs.
Okay,
Have
yeah.
you heard of that?
So I've read a little bit about this, and it's actually something that you say that one of my clients come to mind that this really helped her. That was like her main question, like, how do I structure my meals? Um, and you're absolutely right. The first thing that you put into your body every day is so critical, and it really can. It can set up your your cravings for the rest of the day, and it can affect your energy levels for the rest of the day. So what I usually recommend is in the morning, first thing in the morning, start off with proteins and fats. Okay, don't eat carbs first. It can make you more hungry, craving carbs for the rest of the day. Not that carbs are bad. We need carbs. They're very important, but definitely something we want to keep in check. But yeah, so I normally recommend start the day off with protein, healthy fats. So a lot of times for breakfast, I'll eat like eggs and avocados. And I love like those veggies that I mentioned earlier that I put in the oven. If I have some left over, I'll saute those in a pan and then put a fried egg over them. And that's like one of my favorite breakfasts ever. I feel so good after
Sounds
that.
delish.
Yes, it is. It's so good. And the other thing that's really important to start your day is be very careful with like coffee and caffeine. So we don't want to be drinking coffee first thing before we eat. That can totally affect our energy levels throughout the rest of the day, is the big one. So yeah, I always recommend start the day off with a tall glass of water, get a good nutrient dense meal in first, and yes, prioritize proteins, fats, and then have your cup of coffee. And a lot of um, people will recommend what I read, they'll recommend a higher carb lunch. So you want to have your biggest meal kind of like in the middle of your eating window. So if you wanted to follow that, get that high carb lunch right in the middle of, your eating window, your where you're really digesting food, and then at night or your last meal of the day, I do recommend again a meal that's a little bit higher in fat content. And the reason for that is because fats and proteins, they just take longer for our body to break down. They're bigger molecules. They take they just take longer. So that is why they give us that longer lasting fuel. That's why you feel full a little bit longer. So at the end of the day, I do recommend higher fats because that's going to help you feel full through the night. It's going to help you sleep better. You're not going to wake up in the morning feeling like those feelings of you're not going to wake up hangry in the morning, feeling like you're going to pass out if you don't eat. So yeah, that's normally how I recommend my clients to kind of structure their meals.
Fantastic. So obviously you want to have your health, your nutrition set before you get some sort of a crazy diagnosis, and which
Yeah,
just makes it that much harder to get your nutrition under.
yeah.
And then you have to add in nausea and no loss of appetite and stuff like that. Do you have any pointers in that? I know this is not like your expertise, but
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is not my area of expertise. You could probably speak to this better than I can, but you're right. Like that's so important to factor that in. And I think what I would say on this is like, especially when you are in that situation where everything is so much harder. Um, just remember like you don't have to be perfect to make progress. Like I tell my clients that a lot. You don't have to be perfect. Just, and like you said at the very beginning, just focusing on a little bit at a time. And yes, pay attention if a food is making you feel nauseous or you're having like crazy food aversions or anything like that.
yeah.
Like don't eat them, like you can listen to your body because there's a huge bio individuality component of food. What's healthy, what's necessarily great for one person isn't necessarily going to be great for another. So you can trust your body and kind of what's going on with you, listen to that, and then just like give yourself grace. Like I said, you don't have to be perfect to make progress. So just where
Yeah.
you can make progress where you can.
Yeah, well, I'm a big proponent of grace. I think it's
Yeah.
super important, especially when you're going through a situation like this. I I, I am going to speak a little bit about, you definitely don't want to be eating things with excess sugars. You don't want to be eating the white breads and the crackers and all that nonsense because sugar feeds cancer. So you want to eat proteins and your vegetables and lay off things that are high in sugar, highly processed. And I get the fact that you're not going to have the energy to cook much. So rely on your friends to make you casseroles and stuff like that. Which then they're easy to freeze too, right? Or if you manage to do it once a week, you make yourself a veggie casserole and throw some protein in it and just have at it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love all that. I think all that's very important. Yeah, you're right on.
Yeah, I like I'm gonna be brutally honest. When I went through my cancer journey, the nutrition is not something I worked on. It's not something I went to fix. I did a whole bunch of other stuff, Reiki, aromatherapy. The oncologist told me no to herbs, but every once in a while I did have an herbal tea to help with the sleep, grounding, detoxifying, uh, baths, and just all kinds of woo woo stuff that really it's the holistic part, and you need the whole mind body spirit, especially when you're going through a healing journey. So
Definitely.
yeah, but give yourself grace, especially if you're in the middle of one of these kind of journeys right now, and do your absolute best and reach out to your support network because people want to help you. I promise you, people want to help.
Yeah, and you're so right. And it's interesting. We may have talked about this, but I feel like, and what you're saying, it's interesting how like food and nutrition is sometimes like the last thing we turn to when, it is such a powerful tool that, and I did it myself. I did a lot of different things before I'm like, okay, I need to get real about my relationship with food. And it's because it's hard. There's so much wrapped up in food, just like what we talked about, the cravings and the things like that, but also just like the emotions wrapped up in food and the social aspect of food. So I understand it can be not the first thing that we want to work on, but just an encouragement that nutrition and what you're putting into your body, especially when you're on that healing journey, especially when your energy levels are so low, when you're fighting, when you're, just trying to get through the days. Your food can be such a powerful tool. It can be one of your greatest forms of self-care. Um,
Yes, and all of the points that you made are accurate, and you also have to put on like other things that you could form addictions to. You can walk away from and not put yourself in the environment. You can't do that with food. You have to confront it and fix it. You have to do some work, some shadow work to figure out what your issues with it are, and your parents gave you some issues. They didn't mean to, but they gave you some issues. Just like you're going to give some issues to your kids. Not intentional, but like, and especially if you're a woman, now you can't, don't eat that.
right.
You eat this, don't eat that. Like a whole bunch of extra societal baggage that is just gifted to us. We don't want it. So it's a lot. So if you are not in a healing journey, fix your nutrition now. That way you will be in a much better place if you get diagnosed with something devastating such as cancer.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's such a great point too. What you said about food and addiction to food, it's like you can't. I've never heard it put that way. That's so true. That's such a good point. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. As a person who's lived in a large body her entire life, because of my relationship with food, I, I, I realized I had to have a real conversation with myself and decide what I wanted to do in regards to that. And um, people who smoke, yeah, you and drink, you cannot go to the bar, so you can take yourself away from that situation. You can't take yourself away from the need to have food.
so true. Yeah, that's definitely an extra level of challenge. So that kind of brings my mind one thing that I like to work on with my clients when it comes to just like mindset around food. Um, and I don't know if you've heard of the 80-20 rule. It's a popular rule for coaches, for nutrition, any sort of like modifications there. And I guess I should preface this with, maybe if you are in a situation where like you absolutely can't have certain foods. This obviously doesn't apply there. There are some foods that we just have to eliminate, especially like when you're dealing with something like cancer or any, like I deal a lot with like chronic illness or
Yeah.
autoimmune or things like that. There are things, it's just non negotiable. You can't go there. But one thing that I really like to work with my clients on is the 80-20 rule because like exactly like you were saying, it's like we assign this morality to food. Like if we eat certain foods, like it makes us like bad, or like there's just like this that feeling there that like, which is not like we can probably just stop doing that. Like you don't have to feel bad for eating a cookie. Like, okay,
Correct.
you like cookies. Okay, I
Yep.
eat cookies. um, so I think that the 80-20 rule can just be really helpful with like this mindset and perspective on food. So I normally say, have a goal of 80% of what you eat is nutrient dense, single ingredient whole foods. And then the other 20%, don't worry about it. Eat food that you enjoy. Go to social events and have fun, but just plan for it. Be strategic about it, and allow yourself that enjoyment in areas that you can. And so I like to break this down like a lot of different ways. For me, like I like to think of like 80% of what's in my grocery cart at the store is going to be those whole foods. I try to hit, okay, 80% of my meals are home cooked. 80% of what's on your plate is the healthy food that, your body needs. And then don't worry about the 20%, in areas that you can, obviously.
Yeah. If I want something, I eat it. But it's one or two cookies and not the entire sleeve. It
Exactly.
it's a small bowl of ice cream, not the half gallon. And sometimes all I need is like two bites of the cake just to taste it, and then I'm done. But if I restrict myself, then when I eat it, I'm going to eat the whole thing, and that's counterproductive. So as long as you're most of the time on point, every once in a while, if you have a Scooby snack, it's not going to matter because most of the time you're on track. And
Exactly.
because be I just you know anything in moderation, like it really is true. So, and if you deny yourself, you just all you're going to do is think about the thing, right? So just eat two bites of the thing and be done with it.
Yes. Yeah. And you're right on. And one thing that I really like to, coach my clients through, and I talk to them about this a lot, is your main routine, the things that you do every day. That's what matters. Let's work on the daily habits, the routine, and not worry about the cookie that you had after dinner last night. So what are you what are the majority of your meals? What are they looking like? Are, what are you eating first thing when you wake up? What are you eating right before you go to bed? Like build a foundation, a solid foundation of a routine that you enjoy, that makes sense for you. And then, yeah, you don't have to restrict yourself because you have a solid foundation that you can fall back on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, Another thing I was thinking about, that kind of just prompted my mind in all of this, but one of the, a lot of times we think like when it comes to nutrition or eating better, it's all about what we don't eat, that we never eat cookies or sugar. And, and in some situations, yes, sometimes you have to cut it out. You have to completely cut it out. And sometimes that's easier for people too, to just cut it out. But when it comes to, you know, gut health, improving gut health, and a solid nutrition routine, one of the best things you can do is just eat a diet wide in variety. So sometimes one of the worst things that we do is that we get stuck in this routine of eating the same things all day, every day, buying the same things from the grocery store. And so sometimes the best thing you can do is just buy different things, buy different vegetables from the store. If you are eating a lot of chicken and beef, start trying some fish. Search for recipes with recipe or veggies that you've never eaten before, so and that can be just a great thing to focus on. If you are trying to eat better, how can I get more variety in my diet? Use different seasonings, use different oils, prepare food in different ways. Just try something every week to get variety into your diet, and your gut health, your gut buddies will thank you. They will grow and thrive and do great things for your body.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to stick vegetables into things than people assume it is. You can put squash into chili. People don't even realize it's there. You could like I just
Totally.
there's a lot. Mushrooms make excellent burgers. They just do. Um, and I'm not a vegetarian or anything, but I could be, right? Like if I but I like the meat too much, but I could where I'm at now, like the plate is 75% vegetables and 25% meat and our protein and fats
Yeah.
now. And there's some cheese. There's clearly some cheese in everything I eat because I am a mouse, but there's far less of the simple carbs in my diet now. And it's made a huge difference in my um uh what's the word I'm looking for? Movement.
Exercise, movement, what?
No, stamina. That's the word I'm looking
Oh,
for.
okay.
Just, like, sometimes my brain just buffers.
Oh, it's okay, I understand. That mom brain thing going, so
Oh, I mean, for me, it was the chemo thing that caused
yeah.
that, but and a lot of it's cleared up. But there's still moments when my brain just pauses. I'm like, ah, what's going on? So yeah, like I gained a lot of my stamina, um, and part of it was mindset, and part of it's definitely now I'm getting nutrient dense food
Yeah.
compared to what I was eating, which
Yeah.
wasn't like I've never been a big cake and cookie kind of gal. My things have always been a ridiculous amount of sugar in my coffee and ice cream.
Yep. 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 Totally. I love my ice cream.
I do. So, I'm working on different ways to handle that. And I created my own version of a mud water type deal with all the powdered mushrooms and some adaptogenic herbs. And it tastes like chai tea. Chocolate chai is what it tastes like. It's amazing, fantastic. And I'm like drinking like 3 or 4 of those a day. It's kind of ridiculous, but
Amazing.
um, we're doing our absolute best to be away from the sugar. And in the past week and a half, is it 2 weeks? It's 2 weeks now. I've had like 3 cups of coffee.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and you do really need to do one thing at a time, because I tried to do that and do it the 30-30-30, which is the 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up and then 30 minutes of steady cardio. Well,
Okay.
cannot do both at the same time. So we're one at a time, one at
Yes.
a time.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And it incremental changes is really the way to create sustainable change for yourself, because it is going to be a new lifestyle. And whether you're motivated by a diagnosis or you're motivated because you don't want to have the diagnosis,
Right.
starting now is better than waiting. Like, I waited far too long to do it. I've been battling my weight my entire life. Don't let that happen to yourself. You can do something about it. I'm not saying it's easy, and part of it is mindset. And I know that not everybody is in the same situation, right? I get that. But for the most part, you can change your mindset on things. Like, for me, the word exercise is a punishment.
Yeah.
So I have recreation.
Yeah.
Recreation is fun things that you want to do. So swimming, I have a tricycle, I like to roller skate. So, and hike. I like to hike, but I don't like to go for walks. Explain that. I don't know. But that's just where I'm at. So just changing how you perceive it can change the entire, well, it will change the entire your outlook, and it could be the key
Yeah.
to unlocking everything for you.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that. And it's funny you say that about exercise because I try not to say exercise. So, like, when I'm working with a client, I say, what type of movement? What type of movement do you like? Because you're right. Exercise is not a punishment. It should be like this amazing thing that we do for our bodies. And yeah, I'm a huge proponent of finding movement that you enjoy because that is so critical in creating a routine for yourself that you're going to stick with, that you're going to carry on. And yeah, it's not something that you're always going to want to do, but if it's something that's fun and that you actually enjoy, yes, the chances of you sticking with that is so much higher.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Working on getting back to the gym so I can go swimming in the morning. And, it's a little too cold for the tricycle right now, but convince the husband to take me to the roller rink. That'll be fun, right?
Yeah, see, there you go. I love that. Yes. Getting that physical activity in with your family. I love that. Yeah.
Well, having a partner, a buddy, somebody to do it either with or accountability, super important.
So important.
So, hmm, what what other tips might you have? Trying to
So
think here.
yeah, we talked a lot about, I think I've kind of said everything that I had kind of written down as just tips.
Okay.
There is one last one that it's just a big one for when you're trying to improve your nutrition, you're trying to develop that eating routine, that lifestyle. One of the first things that I recommend is a weekly meal planning session, because we are not just going to wish ourselves into better eating. So I always say if you do not plan it and put it on your calendar, it is not going to happen. You have to write it down, block, and you really don't need a lot of time. Block 10 to 15 minutes every week. Write it on your calendar, pick the day and time that this is going to happen. And this is just your time to search recipes, pick the meals that you want to make for that week, write your grocery list. And it's really just a quick, like 10-15 minute habit that you do weekly. But it's really where all of your nutrition habits grow from. You are not going to hit your nutrition goals. You are not going to make any sort of difference for yourself if you don't get intentional about it and just have a strategy in place. And really, just committing to this one weekly habit can make such a big difference for you. I don't always want to do it. Most weeks, I'm like, oh, I have to do my meal planning session, but I'm always so happy after I get it done. And then the rest of the week, I don't have to think about it. I know what meals I'm cooking. I know what I'm getting at the grocery store. And it's just so helpful, especially when like those cravings do hit you. You're not you're not leaving your nutrition choices for the rest of the week up to fate. You're kind of planning it out. So that is one of my biggest tips when you are trying to make a change in the area of food.
One I've had I circle back to it all the time. I just seem to have such a hard time with that.
Yeah.
Um, but what what I do is I just buy the protein, stick it in the freezer, and then I buy frozen vegetables and fresh vegetables. But and then I'll right now what I'm doing is I'm just making casseroles every night because it's one pot and it's so easy. I just block of cream cheese, whole bunch of vegetables, and some proteins left on top with all the spices. And you change the cheese that you add, and you change your vegetables, and you change your protein, and you have a different meal every night. And
Yeah. That's great. So simple.
yep, stick it in the oven, let it cook for an hour. You're done. Like
Yep.
little bit of prep, and it's not brutal, especially if you're a busy person or an ill person.
Yeah.
Casseroles are
Right.
the best.
And so easy to freeze, right? And have
Yes.
multiple meals. Yes,
Yep.
always.
Yes. Husband has lunch for the rest of the week.
Yes. Perfect.
All right. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on to the show. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I am on social media. I am on Facebook and Instagram. On Facebook, you can find me Alayna Francie. It is my middle name. Sometimes that gets confused. So Franci. And then on Instagram, it's Alayna F Coach. You can find me either places. Yeah, that's probably the best way.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure to put those links in the show notes for people. And I really appreciate that you coming on the show today and giving everybody such wonderful guidance. It's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I hope they get at least one thing that was helpful out of this. But
I'm
yeah.
sure that many things. All right. Till next time, Cancer Warriors. Go plan your meals.